The Galactic Council chamber glimmered like a starship's crystalline hull, refracting light through its angular spires. Representatives of 100 species filled the tiered amphitheater, murmuring in a dozen alien tongues. At the center of it all stood High Chancellor Vrex Dowler, his icy gaze sweeping the crowd as he raised a clawed hand for silence. "The motion has passed," he declared, his voice cold and measured. "Effective immediately, humanity is subject to interstellar sanctions on trade, resource extraction, and expansion. This is not punishment, it is necessary correction for a species that threatens the stability of this council." Elena Draven's heart pounded as she shot to her feet. The commander's sleek, dark uniform contrasted sharply against the flowing robes of alien delegates. Her voice cut through the silence, clear and unyielding. "Correction? You call this justice? Humanity has contributed to this galaxy, innovated, cooperated, and bled alongside others for decades. And now you condemn us based on fear and prejudice?" Vrex's thin lips curled into a faint smile. "Commander Draven, it is not fear but prudence. Humanity's aggression is well documented. The Council must ensure peace." "The Council ensures nothing but its own cowardice," Elena snapped. Gasps rippled through the chamber. "You label us aggressive because we refuse to kneel. But I promise you, this decision will not break us." Vrex's expression darkened. "Enough," he said, his voice resonating with finality. "The sanctions are law. Humanity will comply or face further consequences." Elena glared at him but held her tongue. She had made her point, but the battle was far from over. The mood aboard the Resolute, her flagship, was grim as Elena returned to Earth's orbit. Her command staff assembled in the briefing room, their faces reflecting the tension that had gripped humanity since the Council's ruling. "Let's get to it," she said, her voice brisk as she scanned the holoprojection displaying Earth's trade routes and resource dependencies. "Give me the full picture." Admiral Carter, a grizzled veteran with silver-streaked hair, leaned forward. "We're looking at an 80% drop in resource imports within weeks. Key colonies will be unable to sustain their populations. Manufacturing, agriculture, defense, they'll all collapse without interstellar support." Zara Iqbal, a young engineer with sharp eyes, spoke next. "Our orbital facilities are already stretched thin. If the sanctions hold, we won't last 6 months before widespread shortages." Elena clenched her jaw. "We need options. Diplomatic, strategic, anything." General Lin, head of Earth's defense forces, folded his arms. "Diplomacy? You think Vrex will suddenly change his mind? They've written us off. We need to prepare for a worst-case scenario." A silence fell over the room. Elena's gaze swept across her team, seeing their frustration mirrored in her own. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We pursue both," she said finally. "We keep the diplomatic channels open. But we won't sit idle while they strangle us." Her eyes locked on Zara. "I need a contingency plan. Something that will remind the Council what humanity is capable of." Zara hesitated, then nodded. "I'll assemble a team. We've been prototyping new defense systems, nothing formal yet, but if we push resources." "Do it," Elena said firmly. "Call it the Aegis Initiative. This stays classified, if word gets out, we risk escalation." Admiral Carter frowned. "And when the Council demands an explanation?" Elena's voice hardened. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, we play by their rules while we prepare to break them." Late that night, Elena stood alone in her quarters, staring at the Earth through the viewport. The blue-green planet looked tranquil, untouched by the storm brewing in the galaxy. She thought of her younger brother, Michael, a scientist on Mars, who had always believed in humanity's potential. His last message played in her mind, *, we've always risen above, Elena. I know you'll find a way to protect us. *. She sighed, running a hand through her dark hair. Doubt crept at the edges of her resolve. Could humanity truly stand against the combined weight of the Council if it came to that? Her communicator chimed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Vrex. She answered reluctantly, his holographic image materializing before her. "Commander Draven," he began, his tone almost mocking. "I trust you've conveyed the Council's decision to your people?" "I have," Elena replied coolly. "And they're as unimpressed as I am." Frex's expression didn't change. "Defiance will only deepen your suffering. Humanity's place in the galaxy depends on your willingness to accept the Council's wisdom." "Our place?" Elena's voice was sharp. "We earned our place with blood and sweat. You think a few sanctions will erase that?" Frex's icy demeanor cracked just slightly. "Do not mistake this for weakness. Humanity has been tolerated, not embraced. Push too far, and you will find yourselves alone against forces you cannot withstand." Elena stepped closer to the hologram, her eyes blazing. "Then you don't know us at all." She ended the call, her determination solidified. The next morning, the Aegis initiative was underway. In a hidden shipyard orbiting Earth's dark side, engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to bring Elena's vision to life. Massive construction frames held the beginnings of sleek, modular drones and heavily shielded starships. Zara oversaw the operation, barking orders as sparks flew and machinery hummed. Back on the Resolute, Elena briefed her senior staff. "We've set the groundwork. Now we need results. I want updates every 12 hours. Admiral Carter raised an eyebrow. "You really think this will work? That we can outmaneuver the Council and its fleets?" Elena's reply was unwavering. "If they want to test us, they'll learn the hard way what happens when humanity is cornered." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Each officer left with their orders, a mix of hope and apprehension in their hearts. Elena remained seated, staring at the holomap of the galaxy. The Council thought it had silenced humanity, but they had only awakened a resolve far stronger than they imagined. And humanity would prove it. The cavernous shipyard hidden on the dark side of Earth hummed with activity. Sparks flew as robotic arms welded the skeletons of sleek drones, their frames bristling with advanced weaponry. Engineers moved between workstations, their faces tense but focused. In the center of the organized chaos stood Zara Iqbal, issuing commands with calm precision. "Power test on the main thruster array," she called out. "No room for glitches when these go live." A technician nodded, fingers dancing across a console. Behind them, the first prototype hummed to life, its engines glowing faintly as the room filled with a low, resonant thrum. Zara allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before her communicator chimed. Elena Draven's voice came through, sharp and to the point. "Progress report." "On schedule," Zara replied. "The first wave of Aegis drones will be combat-ready in 5 days. I'm confident they'll hold their own." "Good," Elena said. "We might not have the luxury of waiting." On board the Resolute, Elena paced the command deck, her mind racing. Diplomatic efforts were yielding little, and intelligence reports showed an unsettling pattern. Cryon warships were moving closer to Earth's borders under the pretense of maintaining peace. General Lin entered the room, his boots clicking against the polished floor. "Commander, we've confirmed reports of a Cryon fleet massing near Proxima. They're keeping their weapons offline, but the positioning is deliberate." Elena stopped pacing and turned to him. "Deliberate is an understatement. They're testing us. If they think we're weak, they'll push further." Lin's jaw tightened. "I've already doubled patrols around Earth and the colonies. But if this turns hot, we'll be outnumbered 5-1. "Outgunned doesn't mean outmatched," Elena said, her tone firm. "We've faced worse odds before." Lin hesitated. "We have, but we've always had allies. The Council's made sure we're isolated now." "Not entirely," Elena said. "I'm meeting with the Relic Envoy this afternoon. They've been sympathetic before. If anyone's willing to push back against Frex, it's them." The Relic Envoy arrived in a sleek, crimson starship, its hull reflecting the light of Earth's sun. Envoy Kalesh, a tall, reptilian figure with emerald scales and piercing yellow eyes, stepped onto the Resolute. His robes were adorned with shimmering patterns that shifted as he moved, a sign of his high status. Commander Draven, he said, inclining his head. It is an honor, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Likewise, Envoy Kalash, Elena replied, gesturing for him to follow her to the briefing room. Once seated, Kalash wasted no time. The sanctions against humanity are deeply troubling. Many among the relic view them as unjust. Then stand with us, Elena said, leaning forward. Your voice carries weight in the council. If you speak out, others might follow. Kalash's eyes flickered with unease. It's not that simple. Vrex has consolidated power among the dominant species. The Cryon hold considerable influence, and my people cannot afford to provoke their wrath. The sanctions are harsh, but open defiance could lead to war. War is exactly what they're pushing us toward, Elena said. If the relics stand by and let this happen, who's next? The Cryon won't stop with us. Kalash hesitated, his claws tapping against the table. I will bring your concerns to my council. But I cannot promise more than that. It wasn't the commitment Elena had hoped for, but it was a crack in the council's facade. A sign that not all species were blind to the Cryon's overreach. Back at the shipyard, Zara's team encountered their first major setback. A miscalculation in the drone's power cores caused a short circuit, shutting down an entire production line. Zara cursed under her breath as alarms blared. Shut it down, she shouted, sprinting to the control panel. Divert auxiliary power to stabilize the systems. A technician called out, Core 3 is overheating. We'll lose the prototype if. Override the failsafe and vent the excess charge, Zara interrupted. There was a tense pause as the technician complied. The room held its collective breath until the core's glow dimmed and the alarms quieted. Zara exhaled slowly, wiping sweat from her brow. We can't afford another mistake like that. Double-check every calculation, every connection. Failure isn't an option. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Elena reviewed intercepted communications from the Cryon fleet. The encrypted messages hinted at plans for a peacekeeping deployment near Earth. She slammed her fist against the console, the frustration boiling over. Her communicator buzzed. It was Vrex. Commander Draven, he began, his voice as composed as ever. I trust your preparations are proceeding smoothly. What do you want, Vrex? Elena snapped. To remind you that defiance will not serve you well, he said smoothly. The Cryon fleet is merely ensuring stability in the region. Should your ambitions escalate, we will respond accordingly. Your fleet is an act of provocation, Elena retorted. You're not here to keep the peace, you're here to intimidate us. Vrex's smile was as cold as ever. Interpret it as you will. But remember, the Council has the authority to act against any threat. Choose your next steps carefully. The line went dead, leaving Elena seething. That night, Elena stood in the observation deck, gazing at the stars. Her thoughts were interrupted by Zara's arrival. Commander, Zara said, her voice weary but determined. We've stabilized the production line. The drones will be ready as planned. Elena turned to her, the weight of leadership etched into her expression. Good. We'll need them sooner than I hoped. Zara hesitated, then added, if it comes to a fight, do you think we can win? We don't have to win outright, Elena said. We just have to remind them why humanity is not to be underestimated. Zara nodded, her resolve strengthened by Elena's confidence. As the days passed, tension continued to mount. Cryon ships crept closer to Earth's borders, their intentions clear despite their official denials. Elena knew time was running out. Diplomacy had stalled, and humanity's preparations were being pushed to the limit. In the silence of her quarters, Elena composed a message to her brother Michael. She kept it brief, knowing the weight of her words would carry through. We're doing everything we can. Stay strong. Humanity isn't done fighting yet. She sent the message and leaned back, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. The storm was coming, but humanity would meet it head-on. The tension on the Resolute S bridge was palpable as Elena Draven stood before the central display. The holographic map showed the Cryon fleet inching ever closer to Earth's defensive perimeter. Red markers pulsed ominously, each representing a warship bristling with enough firepower to reduce a city to rubble. "Status report," Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Lieutenant Morales, her tactical officer, responded swiftly. "Cryon fleet holding at Proxima's edge. 72 vessels detected, including carriers and cruisers. They've deployed reconnaissance drones near Mars." Elena's fingers curled into fists. It was a calculated move, an act of intimidation meant to keep humanity guessing. But she refused to blink. General Lin stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Commander, they're probing for weakness. If we don't respond, they'll push harder. And if we respond too soon, we risk giving them the excuse they're waiting for," Elena countered. "We need to be smart about this." Admiral Carter chimed in, his tone grim. "Smart only gets us so far. Sometimes, you've got to remind them why they should fear us." Elena nodded. "We'll remind them. But on our terms." She turned to Zara Iqbal, who had been monitoring the Aegis Initiative's progress. "How soon can we deploy the drones?" Zara glanced at her datapad, her brow furrowed. "The first wave is operational. They're not at full capacity, but they'll be effective in a tactical strike." "Then it's time," Elena said, her decision made. "We'll target their reconnaissance units near Mars. A precise, controlled response, enough to make them think twice without escalating to open war." The Resolute slipped through the darkness of space, its hull cloaked in electromagnetic dampeners to avoid Cryon sensors. In its cargo bay, the first wave of Aegis drones lay dormant, their sleek, angular forms gleaming under the dim lights. Zara oversaw the final preparations, her hands moving deftly across the control panel. "They're ready," she said over the comms. Elena's voice came through, calm and resolute. "Deploy on my mark. Target the Cryon drones only, no collateral damage." The bay doors hissed open, revealing the void beyond. One by one, the Aegis drones powered up and glided into space, their thrusters silent and nearly invisible. They moved with precision, forming a formation that mirrored a predator stalking its prey. On the bridge of the Cryon command ship Vorshal, Commander Tereth watched the tactical display with a mixture of boredom and disdain. The humans had been predictably silent in the face of their superior fleet. "Weakness," he thought. "Report," he said, his voice a growl. "Recon drones near Mars transmitting as expected," his officer replied. "No signs of unusual activity." Tereth sneered. "Pathetic. They don't even." An alarm blared, cutting him off. The display flashed red as one of the Cryon drones vanished from the grid. Then another. And another. "What's happening?" Tereth barked. "Unknown. The drones are being neutralized, no energy signatures detected." Tereth leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Humans," he hissed. "Bring the fleet to full alert. I want." The command ship shuddered violently, throwing Tereth and his crew off balance. Sparks flew from a console as the officer shouted, "We're under attack. Multiple unidentified contacts." On the tactical display, the Aegis drones appeared like spectral wraiths, weaving between Cryon ships with impossible agility. Their advanced cloaking systems rendered them nearly invisible until they struck, their precision strikes severing critical systems without causing unnecessary destruction. Aboard the Resolute, Elena watched the battle unfold on the holodisplay. The Aegis drones were performing flawlessly, dismantling the Cryon reconnaissance network with surgical efficiency. "Direct hit on their primary comm relay," Morales reported. "They're blind in this sector." Elena allowed herself a brief smile. "Good. Pull the drones back before they can regroup." "Commander," Zara interjected, her voice urgent. "We're detecting a power surge from one of their carriers. They're scrambling fighters." "Too late for them," Elena said, her tone unwavering. "Recall the drones. Let them stew in their confusion." On the Vorshul, Tereth seated as his officers scrambled to regain control of the situation. The human attack had been devastating, but what infuriated him more was its precision. They had struck and vanished before he could mount a proper response. "Mark my words," he growled. "The Council will hear of this, and humanity will pay." Back on the Resolute, the atmosphere was one of cautious optimism. The crew had watched as their bold strike sent a clear message to the Cryon: humanity would not be intimidated. Elena addressed her senior staff, her tone firm but measured. "Today was a success, but it's just the beginning. The Cryon will retaliate, and we need to be ready." This wasn't about winning a battle, it was about buying time to prepare for what's coming. General Lin nodded. "We've shown them we're not defenseless. That alone changes the game." Zara added, and the Aegis drones performed even better than expected. "With more time, we can scale up production and improve their systems." "Good," Elena said. "Because when the Cryon come back, they won't underestimate us again." As the crew dispersed, Elena returned to the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The battle had been a calculated gamble, one that had paid off for now. But she knew the road ahead would only get harder. Her communicator chimed with a message from her brother Michael. His words were simple but resonated deeply. "Well done, Elena. They'll think twice now. But don't stop, keep showing them what we're made of." Elena smiled faintly, her resolve solidified. Humanity had taken its first step in defiance of the Council's oppression. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, she felt hope burning brightly. The galaxy would remember that humanity never surrendered,